that he's coming back is that day is going to come and it's going to pass and Trump is not going to be president. And the only thing that will change as a result of that day passing is I will lose a little bit more faith in humanity because they're not going to cast him aside for his terrible prediction. They're still gonna love him. It doesn't matter, you can say whatever you want. So we've got a little bit more crazy from him, but Sabrina, what do you think about him getting more specific with his prediction that it's gonna be the 13th, somehow Trump is gonna be president again?
I just wanna know what this 13 number means to him, like why this specific date. I truly have no idea where he's going with this, and the whole whiteboard thing behind him just looks weird. I actually had not actually seen the text on it, and so I mean the fact that even like, when was it, like a few months ago when he was on Fox and even they were telling him to like, hey, you can't be saying this stuff. Like, Lily, we're gonna get in trouble. You need to stop. And then he felt censored by Fox. And it's like, oh, now there's this division on the right. And it's like, honestly, I don't mind that. Go for it. You guys eat each other apart. We know about that. But I can't pin this guy.
Yeah, it's a weird prediction. It's specific. Mr. Unknown on Twitch pointed out another reason it's weird. Who starts a new job on a Friday? Apparently it's Friday. Yeah. Wouldn't it be Monday he'd come back? No, but it would be very Trump to come back, like give a little speech and like, okay, I'll see you in a few days. I'm gonna go relax for a bit. But anyway, you alluded to the other bit of crazy. Now, I hesitate to show this to the audience because once you see this, you will be mad. It's like looking directly into the pupils of Great Cthulhu. But let's bring up the picture. So you've got this board, which is supposed to prove, I don't know, it's how they get information to Trump, they say. You know what, I don't even like this version. Let's go to the next version that was put together by Spencer Rothball, who's just he's gonna complete what all of us were predicting. It's gonna have Charlie Day in front of it. Because that list, that board is just names. It's a lot of names. Every one of them is Pepe Silvia. But no, it's just every right-wing name you can think of with an arrow pointing at Trump and some Bible verses. And they posed in front of it. And that didn't lead the people in the room to think, oh wait, am I in a cult? Am I with the crazies? It's like, this is a cheat code to know that you're surrounded by crazies. They did the board filled with names. How do you still not get it? It's just like, I'm looking at it. Sean Spicer, Lou Dobbs, Charlie Kirk. It's just arrows going around. Dan Bongino, some guy named Brick. Who's that? I don't know. There's a doctor. I've never heard of them before. Maybe it's the demon semen doctor. I don't know. Neither do they, because they're out of their minds. It's just names. Why would you put that together? It could be a bullet point list. You don't need the arrows. What's the point of the arrows?
Was this a group project or was it just kind of like one person filling out the whole board by himself? Because it's like, if it's one crank doing it, you know what? Maybe you see weird people all the time, but if this was like a collective type thing, then I'm concerned. Because the thing about like the Pepe Silvia meme, it's like Charlie was illiterate. And he was misreading Pennsylvania, and that's how he got Pepe Silvia or something like that. And so it's like, how many people worked on this?
I think it is one crazy person who's been driven mad by lockdown, and eventually he's gonna take an axe and bust through the whiteboard. And it's gonna be all work and no play makes Trump president again. Anyway, these people are crazy and they are very influential and have far bigger audiences than us. So that's the last thing I'll leave you with to scare you. Anyway, Sabrina, it was a delight to have you back on the show. Thank you for joining us. Where can people watch you in the future?
Thanks so much for having me again and for letting me pitch some stories for today. People can find me on youtube.com/AbelinaSabrina, where I make my comedy sketches and sometimes I do political commentary, or you can follow me on Twitch, same name, twitch.tv/AbelinaSabrina, where most of the time we'll talk about news and local politics.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabrina. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.
And for those of you at home, thank you for watching. Much appreciated. Indisputable is coming up with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, and David Schuster is gonna be on as well. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. Tomorrow is two things that you need to pay attention to. One, Three things actually. One, Brett Ehrlich will be back. Two, anniversary of the founding of the Dragon Squad, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun. And three, it is still garbage day after all. So if you could head over to the community tab on our YouTube channel, you go to that community tab, you scroll down, you will get to vote for who you think should be the Dragon Squad community garbage person of the week. It's the big return of Brett Ehrlich, so we wanna get that vote count high. So head over there right now so you don't forget. And until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.
You know what time it is. Welcome to Indisputable. Good to be with you. We have a lot on the agenda today. Ladies and gentlemen, my debate guest, this is going to be interesting. We're bringing him back. His name is Christopher Naim, founder of American Veterans Policy Network. We're going to talk about Donald Trump and his new class action lawsuit against all of the social media big guys. So we'll see what happens, and we'll chop it up about a couple of other items as well. Also, to break down news of the day with me, the man, the myth, the legend, I have David Schuster, TYT contributor. Oh man, this is gonna be something. Okay, and also Varun Nakor, president of AAPI Victory Fund. We're gonna chop it up about what's happening in that front and also the rise of violence against Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. We're gonna talk about that because it's important. Ladies and gentlemen, my top story. Donald Trump, just the myth. He has now said he is suing all of these big companies, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and this lawsuit is dead on arrival. So let me be very clear about what the former president of the United States is doing. I'm from Glenwood Road, so I peep game all the time. He's using this as an opportunity to become the great catalyst for his presidential run. That is all he's doing. He knows that this lawsuit goes nowhere. His attorneys are well aware that this lawsuit will go nowhere. Why? Because one, Trump does not want to subject himself to discovery, where he actually has to hand over information and testify to certain things. He doesn't want to do that. He will never get to that point. They're not claiming a specific amount of damages. As a matter of fact, Trump said trillions of dollars, because it is a phony lawsuit. And they're filing it as a class action lawsuit, claiming that this is about conservative voices. So let's go to some of the background. Trump, who has filed this lawsuit in the US District Court of the Southern District of Florida, was suspended from the platforms since January, when his followers violently stormed the Capitol building, trying to block Congress from certifying Joe Biden's presidential win. The company cited concerns that Trump would incite further violence and have kept him locked out. All three declined comment Wednesday. So he's saying that all conservatives in this class action lawsuit have been constitutionally violated by these private companies. But here's what's interesting. Posts by conservative commentators like Ben Shapiro, Franklin Graham, and others, they're still there. These people are still active on those social media platforms. Here's the big problem, okay? Here's the big challenge. Donald Trump can actually win this lawsuit, but there's one small thing that gets in his way. It's called the United States Constitution. The First Amendment of the US Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is the actual Constitution. The amendment was included in the original document. It says that Congress shall make no prohibition to that freedom of speech, shall not abridge that freedom of speech. And the last time I checked, I'm not a legal scholar. I just finished 1 year of law school. I'm no constitutional expert. I just know how to read. Congress is not Twitter. Congress is not Facebook. Congress is not YouTube. As a matter of fact, based on interpretation of the Supreme Court and other federal courts, private companies have the same rights basically as if somebody stepped in your home. And if somebody stepped in your home and they started bumping their gums, talking jazz that you don't like, you can tell them to get the hell out your house. That's how courts have typically interpreted the right of private companies to say, here's what we will accept at this company, here's what we will not accept. So why is the lawsuit being filed? It is propaganda, it is PR, it is the new great evil that they are creating, because this is a win-win situation for Trump. Trump only likes win-win situations. If he wins the suit, let's say in La La Land, he won the suit, okay, that's a win. but he will lose the suit, but he will claim a victory saying that because of him, policies are changing. He's going to raise a bunch of money in the process. He's not going to spend that money on the legal case. He's going to parlay that money into his presidential run, or maybe give some of it to a few of the cronies that are going to back him, and they are running as well. That is what this is about. To break this down and more, I have the big homie, David Schuster, my brother. How you doing, man?
Dr. Richie, I am so honored, excuse me, I'm so honored to be on your show. I love what you're doing. I love the successes you've had, and it is great to be on with you, so thank you.
Man, the feeling is quite mutual, and I appreciate you being on Indisputable. It is a high honor. Let's talk about what Trump and his legal team are proposing. Is this something that holds weight or not?
Well, I think your analysis is spot on. First of all, the politics, it's smart for Donald Trump, right? Because he can say, hey, this is another grievance. This is another time where I've somehow been discriminated against and conservatives are being hurt by big tech. And even though that's not true, as you pointed out, Dinesh D'Souza, Ben Shapiro, a whole bunch of others are all over the place on Facebook and YouTube and the rest. But Donald Trump can play to his base and say, look, woe is me, they're hurting us, they hate you, we're all in this together, so let's go get big tech. And it's smart politically, it gets him a lot of headlines, it gets him in the news, which is something that he wants. On the legal analysis, you're also spot on, because private businesses can set their own rules. There's no First Amendment right to speak out in a private business. And so it's only the government that can say, hey, it's only the government that we're trying to keep from blocking your free speech. Facebook, Twitter, social media. If you want to get on an airplane, you don't want to wear a mask. Well, those businesses have the right to issue certain restrictions. The only possibility I could see in one scenario here would be as if Donald Trump was somehow able to show that he was discriminated against because there are others, say, on the left who have repeatedly violated the Twitter or the Facebook or the YouTube terms of service, say have called for assassinations or violence, and that social media did not take actions against them. And Donald Trump could somehow prove that this is only because, well, they're Democrats and I'm a Republican, therefore they're coming after me. But I don't see that evidence out there. And so I think you're right, this lawsuit is dead on arrival. It's total nonsense from a legal point of view, but it does make sense politically.
You know, there was a time in Donald Trump's political career, not too long ago, where he could make breaking news in the middle of the day with one tweet. That power has been taken away from him because he abused it. And frankly, I'm glad they took his account away. I'm actually not a big supporter of eliminating these accounts for a practical reason. David, I really believe you need to track these individuals. You have to know exactly what they're thinking and how they're talking. Now, governments have figured out a way to still infiltrate many of these groups, especially these white supremacist groups, because they have been forced underground, so they have other mechanisms to connect and to follow them. But Donald Trump was being so insanely aggressive and irresponsible with his tweets and his rhetoric. I thought it was only the proper thing to do to suspend him from these platforms. And think about this. Do you think it was going to get worse or better after he was president of the United States? While he was president, there was a level of restriction, even though it seemed to be off the rails even then, there was a level of restriction there that would not exist after his presidency.
Look, I hear you on both points. First of all, I agree. I think that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I'd rather have everything out in the open and everybody be able to say whatever they want so we can all say, hey, look at what they're saying. But Donald Trump, you're right, was in such a unique position with his more than 50 million followers on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, nobody else has that kind of platform or had that kind of platform in social media. So I don't think you can say, oh, well, Donald Trump is just like everybody else, when he is calling for armed insurrection, when he is encouraging people to deny the election results, when he's talking about a coup and overthrow of the government, he is uniquely positioned to get so many millions of Americans riled up over that, so many millions of Americans who maybe just don't know better or follow Donald Trump blindly. And so I do think there's a certain responsibility that government, that institutions, that private businesses have to make sure that those people who are unique in our society, who have unbelievable followers and sway over people, that to try to make sure that those statements from them, whether it's online, whether it's on Twitter, that those do fall within the terms of service, the rules, and that you're not encouraging violence, which is what Donald Trump was doing.
You made a great point about the one possible caveat is the unequal enforcement clause. where they can prove, hey, this person said this, they were not suspended from the platform. My person said this and they were suspended from the platform. But I think the argument, one, has to be made about his influence. Everyone does not have the kind of following that Trump has. So that means there's a different level of actual impact. And these are very, very massive companies with a lot of people interaction. If you look close enough, David, you're going to find some unequal application. Hell, I've been suspended from Facebook, and I know somebody that's a friend of mine did the same thing, and they did not get suspended from Facebook. We've all been to Facebook jail or should have been in Facebook jail at some point, right? So there's this unequal application because they can't catch everything. However, the impact of Donald Trump must be weighed into the decision. But I don't think it goes that far. And here's why I don't think they're going to make that argument. I don't think any of these attorneys want to actually proceed with a real legal case. They don't want to get into actual litigation because it opens Donald Trump up to discovery. And if they attempt to play with discovery, they can be in contempt of the actual federal judicial proceeding. And I don't think they want to open their guy up to that kind of liability.
Oh, I've heard from some folks out there who say, you know what? I hope this does not get thrown out, because can you imagine the attorneys for Facebook, for YouTube, for all the rest, having the opportunity to cross-examine Donald Trump under oath in a deposition? I mean, that would be a gold mine. And so I know a lot of people, a lot of lawyers would love to do that. And I think for that very reason, you're right, this is gonna end much sooner than Donald Trump could ever be in some sort of deposition, ever having to face questions or allowing the social media giants to thumb through all of his various records and material that they would be entitled to under discovery in this deposition or in this lawsuit.
Yeah, so if the judge is anti-Trump, the judge will allow this to move forward as is. That's what will happen. Let me shift gears.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this on the program, David. There's this sentiment of civil war from Trump supporters. We've seen the conversation of civil war when he ran for president the first time. They threatened civil war when he got elected. They threatened civil war when he lost the election. There's an actual candidate. There's a congressional candidate who is known as the MAGA bride candidate. Because, can we get that picture? Let's put that picture up. She got famous because she wore a wedding dress, had her Make America Great, whatever, and she has her artillery. So she's known as the MAGA bride congressional candidate now. She's running in Michigan, GOP congressional candidate Audra Johnson, who became known as the MAGA bride after appearing at her wedding reception in a Make America Great Again dress in 2019, is warning of an impending civil war as she attempts to unseat a Republican incumbent who voted to impeach President Donald Trump for inciting the January 6th Capitol insurrection. Johnson, who is challenging Congressman Peter Meyer in the 2022 GOP primary, attended the January 6th Capitol insurrection, but claimed she did not go inside the Capitol. However, she, and I quote, knew people that did. Her exact quote, according to the New York Times, a story that she did, we're headed toward a civil war if we're not already in a cold civil war. Now, who is this person? Even on her website, she doesn't give you a lot of background other than the fact she's married to a former military official. That is it. That's really her claim to fame. She says the tired ass Sean Hannity talking points, I support the police. They all say that obviously they don't mean the Capitol Police. And she supports America and she supports patriots. But I found an interview that she did, and this interview really tells it all. It's a short clip, but it says a whole lot. Play that clip.
Is it us against them? Is that how you look at it right now?
Right now, I look at it as patriots versus everybody, right? Okay. I mean, you either love the Constitution, willing to stand for it, willing to fight and work for it, or you don't,
Us against them, patriots against everybody. And remember, her form of patriotism is actually white nationalism cloaked in the disguise of patriotism. David, your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Audra certainly seems wound very tight. I don't know about you, Dr. Ritchie, but when I go to a wedding, sometimes I like to, I don't know, cut loose, let loose a little bit. Can you imagine going to a wedding where the woman shows up with a weapon like that? Nobody's gonna have any fun at that wedding. And secondly, I mean, on a more serious note, I hate it when people try to compare something that's happening now and say, oh, we're in another civil war. Because to me, it's not only historically inaccurate, but it diminishes the significance of the real Civil War. And that is 600,000 Americans lost their lives in the Civil War. We fought over something that was huge, and that is trying to end slavery. For Audra Johnson to say, oh, if I don't get my way, we're headed towards another Civil War is absolute nonsense. And then the other part about it is, she's crazy. She's a lunatic. I mean, to suggest that it's us against them, that it's patriots who believe in the Constitution. I mean, you just established that the MAGA crowd doesn't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in protecting police or the Capitol Police. They don't believe in the institutions of government. And so to me, this is somebody who, look, maybe she's a nice person and maybe she's compelling in some sort of weird way, but I don't see that there's anything there that would cause the good folks in Michigan, even in a very conservative district, to somehow support her and support her calls for some kind of revolution or civil war if she doesn't get her way.
Let me tell you, David, we said the same thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene here in Georgia. Okay, we said the exact same thing about her. And she decided to run the campaign the way she wanted to run it. She was a QAnon believer. She spewed rhetoric about black folks, brown folks, gays and lesbians, Jewish people, and she got elected. She won her Republican primary in a solidly Republican district. And you have more of these individuals who really historically would have existed on the fringes of their political party, now becoming the main voice inside of their political movement on the conservative end.
Look, it's a good point, and I do think we're having more extreme people who are running for office, and they have a better chance now of winning in some of these seats than before. But maybe because of the experience of Marjorie Taylor Greene and because of the publicity that this Audra Johnson is getting in Michigan now, I think there's an opportunity, at least for more mainstream Republicans and certainly Democrats, to make sure, okay, you want to run this candidate, you want her to be the Republican nominee. We're gonna throw everything against her and make sure that she doesn't get elected. Whereas I think Marjorie Taylor Greene may have snuck up on some people in Georgia, but in any case, look, I mean, it's not good for our politics when these are the sorts of people who feel emboldened to be members of Congress to run for office, because we spend so much time arguing over crazy stuff instead of trying to figure out, well, how can we deal with things like infrastructure and police reform and improving education and equal opportunity for everybody? Those are the serious issues we need to be focused on. Instead, we have these clowns who are distracting all of our attention.
She literally commits an act of terrorism. I know she says she did not go into the building. I don't believe her. I think she did. She says she did not go into the building, but she was with the crowd on January 6th. That crowd was part of a domestic terrorist attack in the United States of America against the US Capitol to literally stop a constitutionally mandated process. How can you be for the Constitution when you are bragging about being part of a crew who was actually against the US Constitution? Having that election certified is a mandate of the Constitution that thankfully Mike Pence had not drunk enough of the Kool-Aid to do. He did not drink enough Kool-Aid to stop that process. And look at where he's at now. He's getting booed at events that are conservative events. He went to a Christian event. He got booed at the Christian event. It's almost as if he meant absolutely nothing to the Republican movement. And this is a cult-like behavior, David. This is
I
part
agree.
of the cult.
And the fact of the matter is, even if Audra Johnson was not violent on January 6th, if she went into the Capitol building, she broke the law. She trespassed and she should be prosecuted, and she should therefore be barred or prohibited from being anybody's nominee, even for dog catcher, if that's what she wants to run for in Michigan.
Very well said. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks.
Ooh.
Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
For members, I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a young tourist viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
All right, welcome to Dr. Rashad Richard Indisputable. This is going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you can handle this much truth on any day of the week. The unrest inside of the black community and communities that support them. It's because these cops are not held accountable. You have a family calling 911, and that family is expecting help, not expecting their loved one to be killed by the very people they pay to protect and serve them. Did you ever notice a cop that you work with call any black person the N-word or target people because they were black? Nope. But we disagree that somehow police officers are not also subject to the same systemic biases and racism as any other level of law enforcement.
It sounds like for everybody's need who wants to crucify the cops without looking at it.
No, crucify bad cops, brother.
Of
bad
course.
cops.
We don't need the government to step into our lives mandating that we should be wearing a mask.
You think you putting on a mask, Trey, is government intrusion, but you don't think the government telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body isn't government intrusion.
Where does life begin?
You want to go there? I can read it to you, bro.
You seem very well prepared. Certainly more.
Of course, why would I not be well prepared? They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform throughout this country, so I won't stop, and you won't stop either.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a lot of viewer comments. I'm going to read as many as I can. Thank you for your engagement. Remember to watch me live on Indisputable TYT. That is the YouTube page, Indisputable TYT. Follow us on Indisputable TYT, Twitter and Instagram. All right, TYT member Cray Cray Souffle says, you mean Trump's totally stupid, laughable, gonna get thrown out of court class action lawsuit. That's the one I'm talking about. Exactly. Like the other 60 lawsuits he filed when he said he actually won the presidency. Same thing. Navinix says, plus it's Donnie Dump trying to trick his dumb fans into giving him more money. Well, they're not trying, it's done. It's a done deal. They will give him more money. YouTube, super chat. Devin HC says, Dr. Rashad won't disappoint, can't wait for the show. Thank you so much for that. Fitty Films says best show on TYT. Well, bless your heart. Thank you. Gypsy Mama says 45's counting on the suit being dismissed. If not, he'll have to answer questions about the 6th under oath in depositions. Correct. That's how it works when you sue somebody. Twitch. Bama Raider 12. Richie and the rest of TYT has given me a sword of knowledge to slay Republicans in debates and educate my fellow Dems. We're happy. We're happy that you said that. We aim to please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off. I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
This one is a little more complex because this Karen, and you know what we do, we follow Karens of the world because Karens are dangerous. This Karen is accusing a black male of being a drug dealer. She has her husband there. I assume this is her husband, maybe her boyfriend. He is trying to be a barrier between her ridiculous allegation and this black couple, specifically the black male. Now, according to the narrative, this is from Louisiana. According to the narrative, she thinks this person is a drug dealer because he's driving a Buick.
Beat the literally get beat the
ass beat. He don't know you. You don't know him. You don't know her. You get in the car. I'm about to.
Aaron, get your stupid ass in the car. Get in the car, Aaron. Get in the car, Aaron.
You do not know him. You do not know her. You don't know anybody around here. You are not special. Get your stupid ass in the crack dealer. No, he is not. Oh, what? Really? Because he's driving a Buick? You said crack. Wait, you cross-check that? Hey, I'm sorry, y'all. Hey, if y'all see that bitch in the road, she can't handle. No, she can't handle a goddamn thing, man.
Aaron, get in the car, Aaron.
I mean, that's really an amazing situation. Now, I don't like how he was talking to her. I think they were both drunk, by the way, not just her. But obviously, the Karenicity in her runs deep because he gets involved trying to stop her from being a Karen again. I don't think this is the first time where she has accused somebody of something, got involved with a person or a couple she had no business even engaging with or talking to, but she's claiming this black male is a drug dealer, obviously has no evidence whatsoever. And here's what's ironic about it, more so than what you just saw. For some reason, her assumption of this person being a drug dealer gives her, I guess, the authority to start harassing them and standing behind their vehicle and making broad allegations against them. As I have said before on this program, I have not met a Karen yet who's afraid of a black male. So you can't hit me with this, well, they are afraid and they're acting out of fear. Hell to the no. Every single Karen, even the Karen who thinks the person is involved in narcotics dealing is not afraid to say it, approach them, be aggressive. But it looks like she had to walk home that day. David, does this stuff surprise you yet?
No, it doesn't surprise me. I think we're talking about Louisiana. Clearly, I think you're right. She was on something, drunk. I mean, look, credit to her husband or boyfriend or whatever he was for at least having the sense to know that his girlfriend, wife is just is acting crazy. But what is it about Buicks? I mean, why do people say, oh, if it's a Buick, it's a drug dealer? I mean, look, the questions get into my mind if I see somebody, I don't know, driving a Lamborghini, like, wow, I wonder how they got their money. But to immediately assume that somebody's a drug dealer, that's crazy. And I think it gets to, I think there's an awareness now that a lot more people, a lot of Americans are having, and that is we all maybe have friends or partners or people that we know who when they get drunk, they, their racism comes out, or they're biased, or they say things that are insane. And all of us have a responsibility to rein them in and to say, hey, get in the car, Karen, get back in the car. Don't be mean to her, don't abuse her. But I mean, we all have to stand up, even if we are, inebriated and we think that one of our friends is saying something. We all have an obligation now in this day and age to stop this stuff and to rein people in.
This was just so ridiculous that somehow you correlate a person driving a Buick to selling drugs. First of all, the only people I know who drive Buicks are over 60 years old, and they don't sell dope, okay? They don't sell drugs. But to make that kind of broad connection and then accusation is really, I'm trying to figure out, where did that come from? Was there a time, maybe in 1988 or something, where drug dealers only drove Buicks? I don't know where she's getting it from, is my point. Do you have any idea where she's getting the Buick connection from to drug dealing?
I have no idea, but I think what's probably going on is there's probably something in Erin's life where she can't afford something, she's got some financial difficulty, and rather than looking at herself and saying, okay, what could I be doing differently in my life? How could I be working harder, working smarter, being more effective in order to make more money? Instead of looking at herself, she's projecting, and she's got to scapegoat somebody else and say, well, because I can't afford that, that person can't afford that. And that is what racism and bigotry is all about, that you're unwilling to examine your own insecurities, your own failures, and instead you blame other people for what you can't have. And this Erin is a classic example, and I'd be surprised if her husband or boyfriend stays with her after something like this, but stranger things have happened.
Quite fascinating, but I gotta give somebody credit in that video. The brother, the black guy who was being accused. I mean, he handled himself like a real gentleman. He said nothing. He did not want to engage with this individual. He did not become defensive. He really stood there and really just showed the best of himself in that moment. I don't know if I would have been able to do that. If a random white woman approached me, David, at the Quick Trip and started calling me a drug dealer, I'm gonna give her some words back. He was really, really a nice guy. And listen, these Karens, they keep running into the nicest people.
Well, I wonder if perhaps, these people, I mean, they're able to show this dignity because they know it's coming, right? I'm sure as an African-American man, you've had this happen before.
Oh yeah.
For me, if somebody said this, I'd be so shocked and surprised that maybe I would react. But I almost think that, well, because it happens so often now, particularly a lot of African-American men and women, they're sort of conditioned to, okay, yeah, there is racism. And you actually have to sort of think through, well, how will I respond? And how do you respond? You try to de-escalate. You try to just sort of laugh it off and ignore it, as painful as it may be. And so, yeah, incredible kudos and credit to that guy for maintaining his composure and dignity, because I know a lot of folks, myself included, who would not have been able to handle it as well as he did.
Very well said. And there's another component here, and I call it the hand in glove. Karen is the hand. The glove would typically be law enforcement. And even if you know you're in the right, you know the other person is in the wrong, if they come at you in a particular way and you respond aggressively or you match their energy and it happens to be a white female, well, if law enforcement shows up as a black male, you have a full expectation that you're going to jail and somebody's gonna have to bail you out. And that's really part of the calculation in the response of black men. It's what if this gets to law enforcement? What if somebody pulls up and I'm inside of this argument now with this white female? What's going to happen to me?
Oh yeah, and that's white privilege right there. I mean, can you imagine? Let's suppose it was an African-American man who was, making accusations about a white couple in their nice car, and a police officer arrived. How would that police officer have handled it? And again, it gets to, we have different standards in terms of how police and how all of us sometimes look at these situations. And on a woman like this, Erin can get away with this absolute nonsense because she is a white woman, and because she's, well, thankfully for her, she had somebody she was dealing with people who were willing to sort of laugh it off and just say, hey, get in the car, Karen. But I mean, that's not always the situation. And the double standards in terms of how we evaluate, especially if you're a police officer responding on the scene, to me, that gets to one of the fundamental problems we have in our society today.
I don't like some of the words that the guy used in order to calm down this particular Karen, but I do like the energy and the spirit and the passion to try to be a barrier between a false accusation, what is rooted in a racial context, against a black couple who simply drives a nice car. So I appreciate that kind of passion.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was pure and simple racism, and good for the guy who was able to sort of be that barrier, and also better for the African-American couple that was able to just say, you know what, there are these crazy people out there, and that's just how it is, and we just got to deal with it.
Yeah. All right, next story. Not really surprising to me, and I don't think it's surprising to anybody who's watching. Donald Trump allegedly praised Hitler. He praised Hitler. Okay, so let me give you some background to this story. According to excerpts from an upcoming book obtained by CNN from Wall Street Journal reporter Michael Bender, then President Donald Trump allegedly praised Adolf Hitler during a conversation with then Chief of Staff John Kelly in 2018 during a Paris trip to commemorate World War I. Kelly had been explaining to the 45th president who the allies and adversaries were in both of the world wars, all right? So according to the narrative here, Donald Trump was very consistent and persistent about his belief that Adolf Hitler actually did some very good things, and he does not get the credit that he deserves. Let me take you to this CNN highlight.
This is the excerpt from Bender's book called "Frankly, We Did Win This Election." It says, quote, "Well, Hitler did a lot of good things," Trump told Kelly. When I asked Trump about the remark, he claimed the conversation never happened and he denied praising Hitler, but others said the remark stunned Kelly.
Have you figured out Trump's code yet? If he says it happened, it did not. If he says it did not happen, it did. That's the code of Donald Trump. If he says he did not have that conversation, he did have that conversation. According to a little more background, Bender also writes in the book that Trump was undeterred and persisted in his defense of the German dictator by claiming the country made economic gains under Hitler's leadership. Kelly was indeed stunned by the comment, so much he pushed back and reportedly said, and I quote, "Even if it was true that he was solely responsible for rebuilding the economy, on balance, you cannot ever say anything supportive of Adolf Hitler. You just can't." Spokesperson comes out, Liz Harrington, chief spokesperson for Trump, also told CNN on Wednesday, and I quote, "This is totally false. President Trump never said this. It is made up fake news, probably by a general who was incompetent and was fired." That'll do it, right? So classic methodology: duck, dodge, deny, deflect, and defame. That has been the strategy of the Trump administration and Donald Trump personally. He has now created a race to the bottom with all of his cronies and surrogates, and shame on them for supporting someone who not only supports the likes of Adolf Hitler, but also white supremacy in general. David?
Well, John Kelly's absolutely right. You cannot say anything positive about Adolf Hitler. I would say even if you're an academic and you're a historian and it's your job to try to understand how Hitler came to power and his political acumen, say coming out of World War II, and how he put together this National Socialist Party, even if you can say, well, maybe he was politically exceptional in the 1920s and 1930s, it's still not appropriate. It's not appropriate to say that, I think, in public, or to even, and by the way, Donald Trump is not an academic. He's not somebody, he's somebody who had to be explained to him whose side we were on in World War I and how World War II happened. And so it's disturbing, as somebody who lost entire branches of their family in World War II, anytime I hear anybody saying anything positive about Hitler or Nazi Germany, it is sickening. And the danger that I see is, never mind Trump being an incompetent fool, but it seems to signal, I think, to the neo-fascists, to the white supremacists in the United States, that maybe it is okay to start, I don't know, doing some of the things that Adolf Hitler or the Nazis did. And Donald Trump is now giving people permission to have this conversation. And that's where I see the big danger in all this really coming from, because we start to go down that slippery slope to where more and more people say, oh, Hitler did some nice things and he was good at the economy and he was a good organizer. And before we know it, we have people who are embracing things about Adolf Hitler that lead to the sort of fascism that we're so worried about we're leading to right now in the United States. And to me, that's so frightening and dangerous.
Donald Trump did not create racist people in America. He made them comfortable.
Yeah.
And in making them comfortable, he created a radicalization effect. That's why you see the January 6th attack. That's why you will see continued uprisings that I think the FBI will probably be reporting about very soon. That's why you see these militia meetings happening. We just got a report about one of them that the FBI already infiltrated a few days ago. That's not in a silo. That's not separate. That's part of a design. That's part of a system that's happening in this country right now. There's this interesting story, David. A police officer goes to a wedding. He's off duty. He goes to a wedding, to a reception. He decides to say a bunch of racist stuff. They tell him, you got to stop saying these racist things or you have to leave. You need to get out. Well, he decides to not listen to reason, and he gets knocked out cold. All right, off-duty police officer attending a wedding reception got knocked out for his insanely racist comments. This guy's name is Tanner Holt. You see Tanner Holt? That's him. 22-year-old off-duty Knoxville police officer Tanner Holt last month was attending a local wedding reception when he began taunting a black guest by telling him he didn't know they let black people in the reception hall. Okay, obviously you're racist. This is not a funny joke. Maybe you've hit the sauce a little too hard. You need to keep it moving. Holt then claimed that he was part of the black community, despite being obviously white. At which point the black man asked him to stop talking about racial issues. Well, according to the witnesses at this reception, Officer Holt did not stop being racist. Now, remember, I don't condone knocking anybody out, but I simply assume at this point, the physical altercation against Mr. Holt was justified because nobody was arrested at the reception, and police did respond. After making repeated pleas with Holt to stop being racist, the black man apparently lost patience and slugged Holt, knocking him unconscious. Four witnesses corroborated the accounts of the incident. Notes, witnesses stated that Holt was very intoxicated when the incident occurred. Holt was transported to UT Medical Center for treatment. No charges have been filed in the incident. This took place on January 26th, just over a week after the Knoxville News Sentinel reported details on how Knoxville police commanders helped cover up an officer's racist harassment in 2019. 6 current and former officers told the local news outlets that the department tolerates a culture of racism. Well, you don't say. You were so bold that you thought your racism is also protected when you're off duty. David, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think we've reached a tipping point, and I think we're gonna see more and more of this where people are saying, you know what, enough. I'm tired of the racists, I'm tired of the threats, I'm tired of the sucker punches if you're an Asian American and somebody walks down the street and wants to beat you. And I think we saw this, for example, just a couple days ago in Philadelphia. Neo-Nazis marched into downtown Philadelphia, ordinary citizens, black and white, working together, chased them out and said, get the hell out of our city, and literally chased them out of town. I think people are saying, you know what? We cannot always count on the police and law enforcement to be there for us. If we have to take matters into our own hands, we're sorry about it, but that's how it's gonna be. And we're gonna stand together, we're gonna stop racism, we're gonna stop these threats, we're gonna stop these attacks, and we're gonna let the bullies know that there are consequences for their actions. And I think, Americans generally have had enough. And I think we're gonna see more and more of this happening, and I think it's a good thing. I don't condone violence either. I wish we could resolve all these things peacefully, but the fact that there were no charges filed in this particular case tells you everything you need to know.
Don't let Trump get your ass kicked. And that's what's starting to happen now. Okay, all right. David, it has been a pleasure, my friend. Tell people how they can follow your great work, brother.
You can follow me on Rebel HQ on TYT, the Facebook and YouTube pages there. You can also follow me on Twitter at David Schuster. And again, Dr. Richie, I'm so honored and congratulations on all your success. I'm thrilled for you, my man. Keep it going.
Thank you, brother. Iron sharpens iron, my friend. Thankful for everything that you do.
You got it.
All right, we got more on the other side. It's indisputable, stick and stay.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats, we're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer health care, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a lot of comments. Let me read some of these and then we'll get into our next segment. Remember to follow us on Indisputable TYT and to subscribe to the YouTube channel Indisputable TYT. It's free, it's easy, it's simple, all right? Let's go to Twitter members. Rob says, I heard people this time last year threatening a civil war if Trump didn't win. After he lost and failed to overturn the election, they are still talking about a civil war. MAGA just doesn't believe in democracy. 100% correct. They do not believe in democracy, which means they also do not believe in the US Constitution as they proclaim. But they also don't actually believe in the Bible, do they? Let's go to Aline, middle-aged dragon mama. She looks like Stephen King's Carrie. They're all gonna laugh at you. That was good. Super chat. Funk Bone says Trump got those fools believing it's 200 years ago. Yeah. Snake Anthony 210. I want to see when one Karen encounters another Karen. Can there only be one? That would be great, like a Highlander thing, right? There can only be one Karen. That would be amazing. And we would highlight all of those Karen battles on this show. Diallo says, so how does he act when he's on duty? That's a great question, right? Great point. 18-wheel dragon says, mama said knock you out. Well, somebody did. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a remarkable guest on Indisputable, Varun Nikor, president of AAPI Victory Fund. Let's talk about a few things. Varun, good day, welcome to Indisputable.
Thanks so much for having me today, Dr. Ritchie.
Absolutely. I want to start talking about the increase of violence as it relates to Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders in the United States. We saw this happening, and I'm just talking statistical correlation. When Donald Trump started his rhetoric, we can see an increase happening, but there's been this sentiment of violence against individuals in that community. Explain the context for us.
Well, you're absolutely right. Since Donald Trump got elected, there's been a marked increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans. Part of the challenge, however, that we face nationally is that in a lot of states and localities, hate crimes and acts of violence are not necessarily tracked by attorneys general or police officials. And so while we have more lately seen better tracking, and we know specifically in New York City, results released the other day show there was a close to a 400% increase in acts of violence against the API community. It's largely indicative of this national sort of trend, and one might, on the face of it, believe that since COVID is on the decline, especially in urban areas, that we might see a decrease in violence, and yet the opposite is happening.
You know, this is just one of the saddest things when you have groups who have been targeted because of their race, ethnicity, their culture, their skin color. And that's why we're more powerful together as coalitions. Let's talk about coalition building. How can we provide a unified front to make sure we fight against this insanity happening in the community?
Well, it really starts with calling out injustice everywhere that we see it, right? So, and I think certainly the API community, can do a better job, and we've been very intentional about reaching out to our brothers and sisters in the Black, Indigenous, and Latino communities, and all of those, frankly, underserved, under-recognized, underappreciated in our country. So it starts with that as a base, but we really do need to call it out everywhere that we see it. There are so many injustices that are now sort of being surfaced by these last 4 terrible years of Donald Trump, frankly, where we had to deal with the vicious rhetoric coming out of the White House press room. And then to add insult to injury, the last 4 years where Donald Trump and his minions were essentially coming up with ways trying to target specific AAPI sub-ethnicities, Koreans and Vietnamese and Indians and South Asians and all of us, frankly, Chinese Americans, more prominently, and figuring out ways that he could stop the stem of immigration into this country. And so, frankly, just with surgical precisions, come up with policies that would inhibit the continual migration of folks, which the API community has been the fastest growing segment of this population, the number one, sort of set of immigrants into this country. So it really sort of started with that, and it's really unfortunate, but we have not seen some of that rhetoric kind of die down in terms of its aftermath and its sort of tail effect.
Varun, I know your background. You are a big alliance guy. You believe in building coalitions. This is not new for you. I mean, you've done this for a while. You were appointed under the Clinton administration. You've been this person, especially connecting the business community as well. So I want to ask you, man, because we had tragedies happen here in Georgia, and I'm sure you remember the guy who went on a killing spree and decided to shoot indiscriminately, killing those who were part of the Asian community. Initially there was this backlash of the right-wing rhetoric. And then people came out and said, oh, no, he didn't do this because they were Asian. Of course he did it. Of course, that was part of his calculation. Of course, we know that. Right. But then there was this third conversation. I want you to speak to this third part of the conversation. I had people calling my radio show that morning because I had Asian Americans on my show to talk about this stigma and this criminality against them happening, this discrimination. And I had people saying, well, we need you to stand up for us as well. Yeah. We need the voices on this other side for black people also, because we are more unified when we talk together. I want you to speak to that element of the movement.
Yeah, and it really is a movement. That's a very great point. And what this country is facing right now in terms of the larger racial conversation is, at least in my lifetime, and I'm middle-aged, let's say, it's probably been the most engaging, hard, emotional conversation that we're having as Americans, right, in my lifetime. So I feel like we can use this as an opportunity amidst all the pain, amidst all the suffering, amidst all the anguish that, frankly, all Americans, but particular, Americans of color are feeling, right? And specific to the Asian community, we have often not had to reconcile with the own racism that we felt growing up. I was in middle school during the Iran hostage crisis, and I remember people calling me names, the so-called nationalism that was rising up in the country at the time. And it reminded me of this current moment. It reminded me of the Muslim ban, right? And so there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to process as Asian Americans. And I feel the thing that gets me through this, frankly, is knowing that my brothers and sisters have my back. They are with me 100%. They're supporting me. It just makes me want to be better friends, better allies with all communities when they are going through a hard time, not just in the time of need.
Very well said, brother. And I want you to know we got your back here. We are 100% supportive, and I tell people this who are all part of the coalition. I will stand with you, for you, and behind you. You just tell me where I need to stand. Thank you so much, man. How can people follow you on social media?
Varun Nakor on Twitter, and Action Alliance on Twitter, and API Victory Fund on Twitter.
Thank you so much for your time and your advocacy. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
All right. We got more on the other side. The bullpen is coming up.
I'm Nina Turner, and we are on the road to revolution, baby.
Hello, somebody. And I know
sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something's wrong with you.
When people ask me all the time, what are the lessons from 2020, is that progressives have to get more organized and we got to come together. We have to be as agile as neoliberals. The progressive movement has to understand that it's not just enough for us to have the right ideas. We are right on most of the ideas. We're not perfect, but we're 99% right because it is a humanitarian agenda, but we must get the power. We have to come together in a more unified way so that we utilize our power strategically to topple neoliberalism, and it's gonna happen.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapo here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Welcome back to Indisputable. All right, let me read some of these viewer comments. TYT member Rob says, preach the word, Dr. Richie. Well, thank you, I try. Deanna says, no one can credibly say anything positive about Hitler, considering the Holocaust was the worst instance of murder, war crimes, genocide in modern history. I lost family from Prague at the hands of the Nazis. Despicable. Yeah, it is despicable. Super chat, YouTube. Divolve says, solidarity makes us all stronger. Thank you, TYT community. Absolutely correct. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, he is a returning bullpen guest. We have Christopher Naiwame. Christopher Naiwame is a Republican advisor and also founder of American Veterans Policy Network, AVPN. Christopher, good to have you back on Indisputable. How are you?
Doing well, Doc. Thanks for having me back on the show.
All right, so brother, you know I gotta ask you to do that damn Trump impression you did before you came on the show today. I thought that was hilarious. Let's just break the ice, making fun of Trump a little bit.
Well, it's not making fun, Doc. It's impersonations. And by the way, if I spend enough time around you, I can maybe impersonate you as well. But we do want to talk a little bit. We want to talk a little bit about the lawsuit because you know, Doc, you treat me very unfairly on this show. You know it. Everyone knows it. Your whole team knows it. I can hear it in the earpiece. But let's just have a little bit of fun here, okay?
All right, that's good enough, brother. Okay, I actually like that. I appreciate you breaking the ice that way. News of the day, obviously, Donald Trump announced that he is going to sue. He has already filed his lawsuit, district federal court in Florida, against the major guys, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And he's claiming, based on a specific allegation against Facebook and similar allegations against the other tech companies, that they violated his constitutional freedom of speech. I want you to tell us your thoughts about this lawsuit.
Right, so it's interesting. So I think that lawsuit is about sending a signal. It's about the free speech. And I think in the context of, the universe, it is sort of an encroachment on free speech. However, we get into this issue of a private company and a private platform that has rules. And so I think the lawsuit, I think there's merits in the signal of this. I think these are companies that should be challenged because of many other reasons about inequality of free speech and the way in which they implement the rules. So I think the purpose is to send a signal. The legal standard for prevailing this lawsuit, I think it's very high, and many legal experts don't believe that it will prevail. And in the complaint, they do have a jury request, which is interesting, to send this potentially to a jury, but the bar would be high. So I think that this lawsuit is about a signal and a conversation around free speech, as opposed to the idea you don't have it. It's a matter of debating it on this platform, so to speak.
Christopher, I think you just low-key admitted it's a BS lawsuit.
Well, it depends on what the lawsuit's trying to achieve, right? So I've actually won a federal lawsuit a few years back, defamation related, a little bit different, but the bar for winning a lawsuit is high. So it depends on what the purpose is. Sometimes you sue people to quiet them, to slow them down, to send a signal. But in terms of fighting to win, as the former president often said, I don't think that will happen here in the court.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because obviously he has a major issue. And the major issue is the actual US Constitution, because the Constitution says that Congress shall not make a rule or a law to abridge the freedom of speech. That's the Constitution. The last time I checked, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, they are not the US Congress. Congress cannot make a rule to limit or abridge that freedom of speech. But even with your freedom of speech, there comes the reality of responsibility. If you start to cry out fire in a crowded building, there's no fire, well, you can be arrested if people get injured, right? So your freedom of speech has statutory limitations by law. Every freedom has a statutory limitation. Now, here's what I believe Trump is doing, brother. And I want you to tell me, am I completely off basis? I think Trump is playing his political base. I think he's making people believe that he actually has a credible lawsuit when you know he doesn't. His lawyers know he does not. He knows he has no credible lawsuit. I think he's playing his political base to do a few things. One, as a catalyst to get him back in the news and back in the conversation every day of the average American, because he no longer has the power of Twitter to make breaking news when he chooses. Number two, I think he has launched this lawsuit so that he can create a great evil. He likes to create his villains, and he's creating the new villain. The new villain is going to be these big tech companies. And when he loses the case or the case gets thrown out, Christopher, he's going to then claim that the judges that threw it out, they are part of the problem, making them part of the villain argument. And he's going to raise, number 3, a whole bunch of money, not for the legal case, because they all know this is not actually going to trial. He would never subject himself to discovery or anything else, but he's going to raise a lot of money in the process over a case that is frivolous and truly fraudulent.
I don't think you're wrong in any of those points. I think that's sort of the chronology of the attack plan that the president's used in politics and in business, and it's served its purpose in many of those forums. But I think the key here, though, I think he's on to one thing, and I do think that the big tech is so unbelievably driven by us, and you can see certain folks get just hammered and shut down. And oftentimes with speech, we're in this era now where we're looking at violent altercations and incite to violence and these sensitive issues, but yet on the one hand, you could have implicit violence and statements that just fly around and there's no issue. And then you might have somebody maybe on the conservative side that makes an allusion to something, they're shut down. And oftentimes there's no court in the social media bar, so to speak. I mean, it is simply, we saw this. If you're a comedian, for example, and you make a joke in context, it's, you've been flagged for hate speech. Don't let it happen again. So you're going to keep your account, but you never get and that's happening a lot to conservatives. So I would say there's some merit to taking them on and putting this conversation out publicly. But then to be fair, if Republicans are free market, if you don't like the bar, go to the bar next door, open a new platform, something like that. So I would agree with you that, you can't have it both ways.
That was actually my second point of the hypocrisy that's involved here, because Republicans are big free market people. They believe that consumers or consumerism should actually drive the market reality, not regulation. Now think about how ironic this is, Christopher. You have a guy, Donald Trump, as well as others who are saying we need regulation in this industry, but their political platform is a deregulation platform. But they would like the courts to get in and literally regulate private companies when that methodology and ideology is completely adversarial to their political platform. Please explain to me how these hypocrisies coexist within the Republican Party.
Well, those are challenging questions to answer, because obviously in politics you want to win, you want to focus on your agenda over here, and you don't want to get caught in areas where you have inconsistencies. And I think both parties fall into those things. It's challenging. I mean, I think that they're going to push to the sort of monopoly of big tech, but that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, essentially, it is what it is. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game in politics is, you try to run out the clock before, you have to get pinned down on that. We've seen that with folks on the left that are doing really big on civil rights issues. And then you have Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's cornered, and he's asked a question about an all members white club, and he's running faster than the Roadrunner to his car. So, I mean, if we're looking for hypocrites in Congress, we've got nearly 435 of them in the House and 100 of them in the Senate some days.
So let me tell you, man, and I got criticized by a lot of Democrats for this. I called out that senator because his position is hypocritical to his actual lifestyle. And remember, in that case, this is out of Rhode Island. In that case, he literally owns or is part owner. His wife owns significant shares in a country club that will not allow black members. And he said he would basically discontinue his affiliation with them when he ran for Senate the first time. Well, they paid him off. He got money. His wife is now a majority shareholder. So my point in that is you got a price. Now, yes, you may vote the way I would like you to vote on most, if not many issues, but you have a price, and you have told people you have a price, and I have a problem with that. So the difference between myself and some others, Christopher, I'm willing to call out Democrats as quick as I'm willing to call out you guys. And I'm comfortable in that space. But you're saying on my show that the hypocrisy that is evident here is basically just normative business. And I don't agree that our politics should run that way. I believe in a transformational matrix in politics rather than a transactional one. And if you're okay with the transactional element where you can present one value system one day and another value system the next based on your own selfish need, then we're all screwed. Would you not agree?
No, I would agree. It's frustrating to work within that paradigm, and we have elections. House elections are up every 2 years, and it's very seldom. I don't even really know what era we're in now. I mean, we've been in an era of divided government since the 1970s. Now we're in an era of almost bombastic politics. And what's interesting is if you look at some of the more visible members of the Congress, for example, the AOCs, Dan Crenshaw's, there are studies that show they're legislatively ineffective, which is kind of interesting because the way that the House is set up, you don't actually get a lot of opportunity to amend bills. So it's ironic we're looking at that, but then the whole, as you described, the sort of the chessboard of how things actually get done is often held up. So I totally agree with you. My emphasis though is I do think that if the conversation ends with the big tech companies taking a little more look at how can we come into the middle here and allow certain speech, I get it. And with the incitement to violence stuff, I agree 99%. The problem is if you have reporting, for example, that says Trump's followers, storm Capitol. The only issue I have with that is when you have a politician that says certain things, and then you have a Bernie Sanders supporter that shoots members of Congress, or you have Dallas police officers get shot the same week that Obama was talking about, there was an issue, and I'm not saying he's responsible for it, but I'm saying now do we get into every single public statement when 1% of a fraction of a crowd does something violent? Do you see what I'm saying? So I think we just have to look at the boundaries.
Let me make another argument and show a distinction that makes a difference. There are two elements in the law. One is called causation and the other is proximity. So when you look at causation, it is very clear because we now have testimony, sworn affidavits from individuals that raided the Capitol. Those insurrectionists said we would not have done it if Donald Trump did not tell us to. That's on the record. So you have causation. Causation is present. And then you have proximity. Proximity means that the criminal act happened within proximity of causation. So Trump says it, and within minutes, they were doing the criminal act. So you've proven causation, you've proven proximity, and you can prove the criminal activity. So that's the reason why that's different from, let's say, a random Bernie Sanders supporter committing an act of random violence, because you cannot prove causation and you cannot prove proximity, but you can only prove criminality. So those are the big differences. Let me go to another point you made about AOC and the squad not being legislatively effective. The study that you're referencing is actually talking about their legislative agenda in whole. Them getting 100% of what they are asking for. Now, true, they don't, but they push the needle. And pushing the needle in politics is still the way the political game works. Remember, this is chess, not checkers. So here's why it's not checkers. It's not checkers because it's not based on one move or the other. You're not defined based on one singular move. You're defined based on strategic alignment. You're defined based on how you can position the pieces in a way to give your side the ultimate advantage. And I make the argument that AOC and others, what they have been able to do is create more of a mainstream conversation and mainstream political approach as it relates to true progressive policies in the US Congress. Would you not agree that they have moved the needle, at least on the Democratic side, for what is acceptable as progressive policy?
They have, and I'll give AOC some credit on something. When you step up and you go out and you do something, you should be credited. I don't care if you are unemployed, living in the street, or if what you are. If you go in and you run and you put yourself out there, I think you deserve credit. And that's something that I think is undercredited with her. So I do agree that they're moving the needle. We could probably disagree for several hours on whether some of these are good things. I think some of the aspects of the Green New Deal shut down the economy. But one thing about the discussion with Trump, I'd agree with you with one caveat. I could also statistically say if someone gives a speech and it's passionate and there's certain words that concern someone, if 99% of that crowd is peaceful and goes home and screams at the television, and then you have a small percent that commits a crime, I think we still have to look at I think there's still a conversation there. And lastly, it's the most striking thing to me is how the Capitol Police and how policymakers can't possibly be prepared for scenarios like that. I mean, our military's job is to protect our shores, right? I can't, if your job is to guard the Capitol and you let people go in there, I think everyone should have 10-year prison sentences. And I actually might sound radical. I think if you break in the Capitol, you should be shot. That's me. I might be totally in the rare thing there, but it surprises me that that was even.
That surprises you, brother?
What's that?
Come on, man. Come on, brother. And let me say this. I appreciate you saying that from my heart. I appreciate you saying that because you know and I know that if the people who stormed the Capitol broke in, made makeshift weapons, some brought weapons of their own. If this would have happened and their last names would have been Muhammad, they would have been killed. If this would have happened and those would have been black faces storming that Capitol, they would have been prepared. President Trump would have ordered a preparation in advance. The systems that failed us, that failed those members of Congress that day, Republican and Democrats, those systems decided not to take seriously the known threat that was coming. They already saw the social media rhetoric. They were well aware that people intended to do some level of violence. And they even called, according to the Capitol report, they called for backup. Backup came hours later. So you have all of these systemic failures. None of that would have happened if this would have been black folk, brown folk, folk of a particular religion. All of the systems would have worked just fine, brother. And I think you know it.
So I don't want to avoid the question. I first and foremost, I think whenever you have a high intensity situation, having overwhelming support and overwhelming security is a smart thing. And that was my primary point is I just don't think you should wait because once a problem happens, it's almost impossible to put the toothpaste back in the jar. I could speak to unknowns. I mean, certainly the president's, he had more influence to influence that situation in a positive way. But we've seen elected officials in the past give people space to ruin and destroy. They're going to keep going. I think certainly many public figures could be mindful of the things they're saying in certain scenarios. But look, my main point on that is I can't believe that we have a military budget of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and we can't afford to protect our capital on the one day where maybe something's going to jump off. I think that was a mistake at multiple levels of government. As we know, we've got the city, the district rather, we've got the Capitol Police, we've got the military. I just think it was a failure at multiple levels.
Yeah, but it also talks to the white privilege that exists in the United States because you cannot dismiss the fact that these were white people. That white people committed an act of domestic terrorism. And you as a former military man, you have to appreciate the irony here because you have said they should have been shot. Well, they weren't. Well, at least, 99.9%. Nothing happened, right? They're still trying to round them up because they were allowed to leave. They weren't even arrested there. They got to watch videos and say, okay, we got to go pick these people up. Why do they have to go pick them up? Because we made a big deal about it. They were allowed to leave after the terrorist attack. They were allowed to go home, cook dinner that night, get on their plane, get on the bus, drive their car, and leave a terrorist attack without criminal penalty whatsoever. Do you not think that there's a real correlation between what they did, how they got away with it initially, and the fact that they are white?
Well, the challenge, though, again, if we want to look at statistics, is if you look at the entire crowd, when we have a fraction of that population doing something, the generic response to that could be, well, 95% of the white crowd had nothing violent to do. And we could look at some of the urban violence all over the summer and we could get into, I think it gets a little difficult when you start looking at the statistical analysis of the criminality.
Oh, come on.
And one of the conversations, and one of the things, Doc, and this is important from our last conversation that's germane is, and there's societal reasons for this, in many of those traffic stops, African-American men are more likely to resist arrest. And there could be a variety of reasons for why compared to the Asian Hispanic in a study that we didn't get time to on the last show. So I think it's very important discussion. But we need to really focus in on the statistics. And I would just say, if 95% of a crowd isn't violent, we're looking at a different sample size. I think the Capitol should have been guarded more strongly. If you can't protect the Capitol, what the hell can you protect? I think that's outrageous.
And you were protecting more than the Capitol. You were literally protecting a constitutionally mandated process known as certification of the Electoral College. That's constitutionally mandated. You cannot tell me you love the Constitution and then you're willing to literally violate the actual Constitution in the process of the constitutional mandate. So you can't coexist in these worlds to me. Either you are or you are not, right? We only got 2 minutes left, brother. Let me ask you this question, because I think it's going to come up in this case that Trump has filed. He has filed a class action lawsuit. A class action lawsuit says, I'm the lead litigant, but I'm filing this lawsuit on behalf of all of these other conservative voices that have been silenced by this unconstitutional element from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Here's the problem with that argument on the other side. Candace Owens still got her social media account. Ben Shapiro still got his. Hannity, Tucker, all of the big social media talkers and broadcasters still have their social media accounts intact. So how is he going to make the argument that this is about conservatism when truly the reason why they still have their accounts intact is because they have not tried to incite violence, at least on the scale that Trump did? What's your answer to that?
Well, and that's why the suit will likely not prevail. That's what the counsel for the big tech will make, and I think that will work to their advantage. But you mentioned Ben Shapiro. He said some years ago, but he made an interesting point. He's like, we just have to be careful, whether it's Alex Jones or anybody. If we're going to blame someone, I mean, is Ozzy Osbourne responsible if someone takes their own life because they listen to a song called "Suicide Solution"? It's tricky, but I think you nailed it. That the sort of the broadness and the bully pulpit effect of the president is where that's coming from. And we have to be honest, obviously the relationship has not been friendly between the president and those executives from those companies. But hopefully the conversation will at least end with us taking closer looks at those things, because I do think big tech should at least have some accountability for implementing their own rules equally or closer to equal.
Okay, all right, and to the point about the song, the reason why a person or artist who sings a song or raps something cannot be held responsible for a criminal act because somebody listened to the song is because you need something called mens rea. You need mens rea, which means the intent to commit a crime in order for that to work, or the intent to radicalize somebody to commit a crime. Without that intent, you don't have the causation factor. Brother, I appreciate you being on the show again. Tell people how they can follow you on social media.
At Chris Nowim, first name last, for Twitter, and I'm pretty easy to find. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff, man. You're a very reasonable guy, man. I appreciate you being on Indisputable. Come back anytime.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it.
All right, we got no more show left. Ladies and gentlemen, remember these things. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of this planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.